I'm Rana. I'm a historian of modern China, and I am one of the judges for the Elizabeth Longford Historical Biography Prize. It's often hard to define what makes a really great historical biography, but when you read one, you know one. I would say the ones that I've been most impressed by have a combination of factors. One is real depth of research. I think it's hard to tell a really good story unless you feel that the author has been to wherever it will be, the archives, the diaries, perhaps even the locations where the events took place, to try and take in the sense of what's important to the subject of the biography. The second thing is that it really does need to have narrative pace. Historical biography where you don't feel that there's a sense of progression, I think is hard to get on with. I don't think it has to be a biography of a great woman or a great man, someone who necessarily really changed the world from the top down. Really interesting biographies can be almost diaries of a nobody, people who were not necessarily well known at the time or in retrospect, but whose lives say something much bigger about the times through which they were living. The winner of the Elizabeth Longford Historical Biography this year is in some ways an unusual choice for the prize, because it's not just a biography of one person, it's actually a group biography. And I think that was in itself a rather attractive thing. We'd looked at a few group biographies before, but they're a hard trick to pull off because you have to have a group of characters, each of whom is compelling, and perhaps that's harder than writing about one person. So that was one thing that really we found admirable in Ram Guha's book, that it pulled off that trick. The second thing is that it is very much an account of people who maybe are somewhat, but not brilliantly well known. It's not necessarily the biography that's most obviously about the most famous figures of the period, but this book features figures, including figures actually who would have been defined as foreigners, but who came very, very much part of India's independent struggle. And those sorts of characters come to life in the book, and I think illustrate that even in a subject that's relatively perhaps quite well known, like the independence struggle of India, there are new stories to be told. The judges for the ELHB are a wonderful gathering of unlikely characters. We are shaped by the fact that there are so many different angles to biography that sit within the panel. Antonia Fraser, of course, a wonderful figure who's not just, of course, a biographer, but very much part of British public life for more than half a century now, even longer than that, I'd say, actually, probably getting on for 3/4 of a century. She, of course, brings her immense length of experience, of knowledge of how to write a biography, one that is both academically rigorous, but also sells in huge quantities. But that combination of commercial savvy and real scholarly rigour, that's a rare thing. With other figures, Roy Foster, Richard Davenport-Hines and Flora Fraser, of course, we have other people who have brought different aspects of the biographical craft to life, whether in the case of Flora, that's figures from the historical past who are being revived, or in Richard's case, I think one of his most interesting studies, which is about the passengers on the Titanic. Again, that's a biographical study of a sort, even though a rather unusual one from the point of view of most definitions of that particular genre. One of the things that stays with me is that right in the middle, actually very early in my 5 years of being a judge, the pandemic hit us. It was a reminder that terrible things had happened to people, brave people, cowardly people, famous people, unknown people, for years, decades, centuries before, and will continue to do so. And even though, of course, we should never discount the pain and suffering that people went through during that period, reading the biographies in that spring of 2020 was a reminder that human life does come through at the end, and indeed it has done so.